The landscape of American politics is undergoing a significant transformation, reflecting a palpable disillusionment among voters concerning both major political parties. A recent NBC News Stay Tuned poll conducted by SurveyMonkey reveals that a staggering 38% of adults believe that neither the Democratic nor the Republican Party represents their interests. This sentiment echoes a broader trend of dissatisfaction felt particularly among younger voters and those aligned with progressive ideals. The poll's findings highlight a troubling disconnect between political parties and the electorate. While 24% of respondents feel the Republican Party advocates for them and 23% see the Democratic Party as their champion, a mere 15% believe both parties adequately fight for their constituents. This stark division suggests that both parties have significant work to do in rebuilding trust and relevance among American voters, particularly in the wake of the contentious 2024 elections, which saw independent candidates such as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. momentarily capturing voter attention before ultimately endorsing Donald Trump. Compounding the issue is a pronounced sense of discontent among younger voters. The poll indicates that 45% of adults aged 30 to 44 and 41% of those aged 18 to 29 feel unrepresented by both parties. This demographic skepticism is further underscored by the fact that 69% of individuals who voted for third-party candidates in 2024 also expressed a belief that neither party is fighting for them. Such figures point to a growing political apathy that could have significant implications for future elections. Notably, the survey also reveals a rift within the Democratic Party itself, particularly among its progressive base. A striking 38% of self-identified progressives indicated that neither party fights for their interests, with only half expressing confidence that the Democratic Party represents them effectively. In contrast, those aligned more closely with the Make America Great Again movement display greater loyalty to the Republican Party, with 67% believing it advocates for their concerns. This discontent is not limited to younger voters or progressives. An overwhelming 77% of respondents across all age groups concur that nothing will change in this country until we elect a new generation of leaders in Washington. This desire for a fresh political approach is palpable, with nearly 90% of progressive Democrats advocating for a generational shift in leadership. This yearning for a new direction is reflected in the actions of some Democratic incumbents who face primary challenges from younger, more progressive candidates. In a parallel development within the Democratic National Committee (DNC), Chair Ken Martin has proposed rule changes aimed at reinforcing the neutrality of party officers in primary elections. This initiative comes in response to DNC Vice Chair David Hogg's commitment to challenge out-of-touch incumbents with significant financial backing. Martin's assertion that no DNC officer should ever attempt to influence the outcome of a primary election seeks to bolster voter trust and ensure that the electoral process remains fair and representative. As the Democratic Party grapples with internal divisions, many commentators are calling for a return to its core values centered around working-class issues rather than the radical cultural priorities that have emerged in recent years. Critics argue that the party's shift towards more extreme positions has alienated moderate voters, pushing them to consider Republican alternatives, even if they do not fully align with the GOP's platform. This sentiment is echoed in a thought-provoking opinion piece that criticizes the Democratic Party for losing sight of common sense and practicality in favor of radicalism. The author suggests that the party must reclaim its centrist values to appeal to a broader electorate, emphasizing the importance of preserving stability and safety for working families. As the 2026 elections loom, the stakes for both parties are higher than ever. With a growing number of voters feeling disenfranchised and unrepresented, the urgency for a political realignment that prioritizes the concerns of average Americans is clear. The question remains whether either party can effectively respond to this challenge and restore faith among voters. The upcoming elections will undoubtedly serve as a critical litmus test for the future of American political dynamics. In a political landscape increasingly characterized by disillusionment, A recent NBC News Stay Tuned poll reveals that a significant portion of Americans feel unrepresented by both major political parties. The poll highlights a growing sentiment that neither the Democratic nor Republican parties genuinely advocate for the interests of ordinary citizens. With 38% of respondents asserting that neither party fights for them, the findings underscore a critical moment for American politics, particularly as upcoming elections loom on the horizon. The survey conducted by SurveyMonkey indicates that the Democratic Party faces particular challenges in mobilizing its base. Only 23% of respondents believe the Democratic Party fights for them, a stark contrast to the 24% who feel the same about the Republican Party. This disillusionment is especially pronounced among younger voters, with 45% of adults aged 30 to 44 and 41% of those aged 18 to 29 expressing feelings of neglect from both parties. This demographic trend could signal significant implications for future electoral outcomes, especially as they are expected to play a pivotal role in shaping political narratives. The aftermath of the 2024 elections, which saw third-party candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. briefly capture national attention before endorsing Donald Trump, has left many Americans questioning the efficacy of traditional party politics. Notably, 69% of those who voted for third-party candidates last year reported that neither party represents their interests. This rising dissatisfaction has spurred calls for the emergence of independent candidates, particularly in critical upcoming races such as the gubernatorial election in Michigan, where Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan is running as an independent. A pervasive sense of urgency for generational change in leadership is echoed across various demographics. An overwhelming 77% of adults agree that nothing will change in this country until we elect a new generation of leaders in Washington. This sentiment transcends party lines, with more than 75% of respondents from each generational cohort endorsing the idea. Among Democrats, the desire for fresh leadership is even more pronounced, with 89% of progressives advocating for a new generation to take the reins in Washington. However, the Democratic Party's struggles are compounded by fractures within its coalition. While the party holds a slim majority, 22% of Democrats view their party unfavorably, a stark contrast to the 13% of Republicans who feel similarly about their party. The discord is particularly evident among progressive Democrats, where 30% express dissatisfaction with their party's direction. This internal strife could hinder the party's ability to unite against Republican opposition, which has consistently garnered more favorable views, especially among key voting demographics. The poll highlights a significant gender gap in party support, revealing that 45% of women view the Democratic Party favorably compared to just 35% of men. Conversely, the Republican Party has a more favorable view among men, with 49% expressing support compared to 40% of women. This disparity is particularly notable among younger voters, where young women are significantly less likely to view the Republican Party positively. As the political landscape continues to evolve, the NBC News poll paints a stark picture of an electorate yearning for change. The apparent disconnect between the parties and the populace could lead to a more fragmented political environment, with independents and third-party candidates potentially gaining traction in future elections. The implications of these findings suggest that both parties must urgently reassess their strategies and messaging to reconnect with a disenchanted electorate. As the 2026 midterms approach, the pressure will mount on both Democrats and Republicans to demonstrate their relevance and responsiveness to the needs of their constituents. The question remains whether they can pivot effectively in time to regain the trust of a skeptical American public. In a political landscape increasingly defined by divisive rhetoric and shifting alliances, Illinois Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton has officially announced her candidacy for the U.S. Senate, positioning herself as a staunch opponent of former President Donald Trump. This announcement comes as Stratton secures the backing of the Pritzker administration, marking a significant endorsement that could bolster her campaign's visibility and credibility. Stratton's campaign, which she characterized as a fight for the soul of our democracy, emphasizes a commitment to progressive values and a determination to challenge conservative policies that she believes threaten the fabric of American society. "I'm not just running against a person, I'm running against a dangerous ideology that seeks to undermine our democracy," she stated, highlighting the urgency she feels about the current political climate. The support from Governor J.B. Pritzker is particularly notable given his influential position within the Democratic Party and his ability to mobilize resources and grassroots support. Pritzker's endorsement signals a unified front among Illinois Democrats, which could prove advantageous in what is expected to be a highly competitive race. Stratton's Senate bid comes amid a backdrop of ongoing political maneuvering across the country. For example, Senator Todd Young of Indiana recently celebrated the passage of a resolution designating April 19 to 27, 2025 as National Park Week, aiming to promote awareness of the nation's recreational spaces. Young's focus on environmental conservation highlights a contrasting approach to leadership which could play a pivotal role in shaping voter sentiment in the upcoming elections. Hoosiers are proud of the Indiana Dunes National Park, which serves as a great example of the vast landscapes, wildlife and history that national parks offer throughout our country, Young remarked, emphasizing the importance of outdoor spaces for both community and ecological well-being. In Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer is facing criticism for the ongoing delay in appointing a successor to fill a vacant Senate seat, a situation that has drawn attention to her leadership style. The prolonged vacancy raises questions about the political strategy and decision-making processes within the state's Democratic leadership, potentially impacting party unity as the elections approach. Critics argue that the lack of action could lead to missed opportunities for voter engagement and representation. As the political landscape continues to evolve, Stratton's emergence as a candidate underscores a broader trend of candidates positioning themselves as champions of progressive values against the backdrop of a polarized electorate. With significant endorsements and a strong narrative, she aims to galvanize support not only from traditional Democratic bases but also from independents disenchanted with the current political status quo. Looking ahead, the implications of Stratton's campaign could extend beyond Illinois, potentially influencing national conversations around key issues such as democracy, representation, and environmental policy. As the Senate race heats up, all eyes will be on how candidates navigate these pressing issues, as well as how they respond to the evolving dynamics of a divided political landscape. The coming months promise to be critical as candidates refine their messages and strategies in anticipation of a consequential election cycle. In a significant move that could shape the legislative landscape for the remainder of 2025, House Republicans have initiated the rollout of a comprehensive budget package aimed at addressing pivotal policy priorities. This budget proposal, which must navigate the intricate budget reconciliation process, is designed to align with the goals set forth by both the GOP and President Trump. As this process unfolds, it promises to ignite intense negotiations and discussions among lawmakers, underscoring the complexities of fiscal policymaking in today's polarized political climate. The journey toward passing this budget package commenced with both the U.S. House and Senate passing budget resolutions, setting the stage for further deliberations that may lead to reductions in proposed spending. This initial step is crucial as it lays the groundwork for the subsequent discussions expected to take place once Congress reconvenes on April 28. During this period, congressional committees will begin holding hearings and markups to finalize the text of the budget resolution, with the ambitious goal of concluding these discussions by May 9. If successful, the legislation could reach the president's desk for his signature by Memorial Day, although experts are cautious about the feasibility of this timeline given the historical challenges associated with the reconciliation process. Under budget reconciliation rules, both the House and Senate will draft their own versions of the budget bill. The House is expected to send its version to the Senate via a simple majority vote, a significant procedural advantage as the usual 60-vote threshold is waived. This streamlined approach could facilitate a quicker passage through the Senate pending agreement on amendments and final approval. Moreover, the broader implications of this budget proposal extend beyond mere numbers and fiscal allocations. As Sam Beaver, the federal government affairs manager for the Brewers Association, noted, the budget reconciliation process is not just about the budget, it reflects the priorities and ideological divides that shape our policy discussions. The outcomes of this process could influence funding for various sectors, including those vital to the brewing industry, which is closely monitoring developments that may impact regulations and tax structures. In parallel, the political landscape is becoming increasingly charged, with various factions within Congress continuing to assert their influence. For instance, Representative Glenn Grothman recently condemned a Milwaukee County judge for allegedly obstructing the arrest of a violent illegal immigrant, a move he claims undermines public safety. Grothman's comments emphasized the growing frustration among some lawmakers regarding immigration enforcement and the perceived challenges posed by liberal judicial decisions. "It is shameful that a liberal judge would obstruct federal law enforcement," he stated, highlighting the political tensions that are likely to surface in discussions surrounding the budget. As Congress delves deeper into the budget reconciliation process, the intersection of fiscal policy and political ideology will undoubtedly shape the contours of the final budget package. Stakeholders from various sectors will be keenly watching for how the negotiations unfold and what compromises may emerge. Ultimately, the decisions made in the coming weeks will not only affect the budget for 2025 but also set the stage for future legislative battles as lawmakers grapple with the pressing issues facing the nation. The path ahead is fraught with uncertainty. But one thing remains clear: the coming weeks will be pivotal in determining the fiscal and political landscape of the United States. In a surprising twist in the ongoing legal battles surrounding the Affordable Care Act (ACA), the Trump administration has stepped forward to defend a controversial component of the legislation at the Supreme Court. This move raises questions about the administration's commitment to its long-standing anti-Obamacare rhetoric and the implications for healthcare policy in the United States as the case unfolds. At the heart of this legal confrontation is the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force, a 16-member body responsible for determining which preventive health services must be covered by insurance companies without co-pays. The ACA mandates that these decisions be made by an independent panel insulated from political pressure. However, this independence is now under scrutiny as Braidwood Management, a small business, has challenged the legitimacy of the task force, claiming it operates unconstitutionally. Braidwood argues that members of the task force are principal officers who should be appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate as outlined in the Constitution's Appointments Clause. The case has garnered attention after the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit sided with Braidwood, affirming that the task force members do not fit the criteria for inferior officers who can be appointed without Senate approval. This ruling has now reached the Supreme Court, where oral arguments were heard recently. Notably, despite the change in administration, the Trump administration opted to defend the task force's constitutionality, a departure from the typical practice where a president may choose not to defend a law they disagree with. This decision raises eyebrows, especially considering that the Trump administration has historically been critical of the ACA. Legal experts and observers speculate on the underlying motivations for defending the task force. As noted in an analysis by the Cato Institute, this could be seen as an attempt to bolster executive power by arguing that the task force members can be classified as inferior officers, thus allowing for appointments without Senate confirmation. Such a precedent could pave the way for more government positions to be filled unilaterally, potentially undermining the system of checks and balances that the framers of the Constitution intended to uphold. Critics of this approach argue that bypassing Senate confirmation could lead to the appointment of unqualified individuals in key government positions, which could have far-reaching consequences for policy decisions that impact American lives. The implications extend beyond healthcare, touching on broader concerns regarding the separation of powers and accountability in government. As the Supreme Court deliberates this case, the potential outcomes are significant. If the court sides with the Trump administration, it could redefine the landscape of federal appointments, allowing for a greater concentration of power in the executive branch. Conversely, a ruling affirming the necessity of Senate confirmation for task force members could reinforce the constitutional safeguards that promote accountability and oversight. As the legal battle unfolds, the healthcare sector, along with many Americans who rely on preventive services, will be watching closely. The decision could reshape not only how healthcare is administered but also the very structure of governmental authority in the United States. Ultimately, the Supreme Court's ruling will have lasting effects, prompting critical discussions about the balance of power and the future of healthcare policy in an evolving political landscape.